Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Tell or ask me anything at all in the chat. Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Yazdan says first. Yeah, you're first. Julia Rose says hello, Don. Hello, Julia Rose. Mr. Beatles says, hey, what's good, Don? I'm happy to see you. Sup, Mr. Beatles. Madarush says a wave emoji. Hello, Madarush. Porma2 says bello. Your Discord link expired in just a few hours. Was that intended? No, that wasn't intended. I put a new Discord link like an hour ago. Maybe this one's working. Micah says, Daddy Don. Hello, Micah. I don't like it when people call me that. Madrush says, does your room have windows? Yeah. Damn, says Don, the ditty, my titty. What? Yazdan says, Don, I'm ready for another awesome stream. I'm glad that you enjoy my streams. Porma2 says, LLLLLL, tongue out emoji, LLLL. What? Mr. Beatles says, who'd win in a war? Asia versus Europe. I think Asia. And I think a reason why is because of their population advantage. Julia Rose says, I haven't been able to watch your lives in a bit, and I like the new stuff you added. The new stuff, like the text box here, thank you. Stock says, what's your favorite kind of ice cream? Orange ice cream. Collector Nick super chatted $2 American. Thank you, Collector Nick. I appreciate it. Collector Nick says, hello, Don. Hello, Collector Nick. Sup. Thank you again, Collector Nick, for your super chat. Damn says finger pointing emoji, hole emoji, winky face emoji. I'm not interested in intercourse with you. Ghost says Don Benitez, what's up? Hello, Ghost. Someone says Diddy. I am not Diddy. Riz says, yo, how are you holding up, homie? Good, thank you. Linda says, sup. Hi. C. Brian says, where is the nearest star? The sun. Matarush says, did you gas loudly today and smile? No. Joe Dirt says, there you are. Where have you been? I streamed yesterday. Adrian says, I had a really bad day. I'm sorry to hear that. D says, this guy is handsome. I am, thank you. Yazdan says, did you cover a blanket on top of yourself and pretend like you're a ghost? I don't think I've ever done that. Poluticorn says hi. Hello, Poluticorn. Retray says, do you know analog horrors? I don't. Seth says, I'm a race car pilot. A race car driver? Cool. Fat says, what would you do for a Klondike bar? Nothing, not interested. Retray says, do you know Local 58? No, I don't. Damn says, Don Benitez says, tell or ask me anything in my chat. Do I not make the k sound? Flippy says, are you in trouble? Blink twice. I'm not in trouble. Rachel says, infinite elixir theory. I don't get that Clash Royale reference. Retrace says Marble Hornets. What? Mitchie says, what is your opinion about the reset meme? I hope it works out. I hope people do what they say they're gonna do. Mister says, hey, it's old Donny boy. Hello, Mister. Diddy says, does anyone else have moldy dit cheese after cutting their dit open with rusty scissors? No. 63rd says, I did the deed with my baby brother, and he ripped open my mom and has been looking for him 3 days. Okay. Thrift says, how do I get rid of food fungus? I don't know. Retrace says, opinions on the moon. It's a interesting looking thing. Daniel says, what city are you from? I'm not gonna say, but I live in the USA. Miro says, that sounded fake. I don't know what you're referring to. Prash says, I'm from Superpower, India. India, okay. Marvin says 6'7". Okay. James says, please answer me. Here is an answer. Joseph says, how many Coca-Colas did you drink? Today I have drank 0. Mr. says, Don, will you tell us what state at least? I think in a few weeks I'll be open about the state. The Tennessee says, hi, you remember me? No, I don't. Jay says, I need a quick opinion. Really, really spicy or bitter? Spicy. Chunky says, I remember you was conflicted, misusing your influence. Sometimes I did the same. What? Junior says, I like your yellow teeth. Thank you. Linda says, are you okay? Yeah, I am. Special says, I'm from Superpower Kazakhstan. Is that a superpower? I don't think it is. Marvin says, how old are you? I'm an adult, that's all I say. Live says, has streaming been profitable for you? Profitable? Like in what way? I have made some money. Kay says, if I weigh 99 pounds and I eat 1 pound of nachos, would I be 1% nacho? Sure. R says, I need help hiding 100 pounds of pork. Any tips? I hope you're not a serial killer. Shauna says, happy holiday. Hello, Shauna. Thank you. Kitty says, hi. Hello, Kitty. Wee says, he doesn't have yellow teeth. I think they are yellow. A little bit. Kalal says, are you a crackhead? I am not. Billy says, pulling my worm to you. You're masturbating? Okay. Joe Dirt says, do you believe in parallel universe? No, I don't. Darza says, read me, please. There you go. Thrift says, do you still consider Pluto a planet? No. Jaco says, hi. Hello, Jaco. Yazdan says, do you sometimes think of me off stream? I don't think I ever have. Maybe one time. You do have a memorable name, Yazdan. Marvin says, what cartoon do you watch? I think the last thing I watched was SpongeBob. I saw it recently. Hail Hype super chatted $5 American. Thank you, Hail Hype. Hail Hype says, I wish people could talk to you authentically. People being stupid makes it hard. Yeah, I mean, I kind of enjoy silly, nonsensical, and even mean stuff. I think it makes things uh, more interesting to have like an unfiltered chat where people say whatever they want. I like it that way personally. Thank you again, Hail Hype, for your super chat. $5. Thank you. Yazdan says the SpongeBob movie is so ass and inappropriate. I didn't watch that. That does look pretty bad. Skibbity says, what's your opinion on the Epstein files? I'm not in it. And Damn says Mexican Diddy Chucky doll. Ben, that's what you think I am? Okay. Julia says, would you drink a beer out of Elon Musk's unwashed belly button for $13.6 million? I'll cross that bridge if and when I get there. P says, we support the gay stream, bro. You're so brave. You're pro LGBT? Okay. Ahan says, can I have a happy birthday? Happy birthday, Ahan. I don't know why you care that I say that. I'm just some stranger. Ellie says hi. Hello, Ellie. Bryson says he's reappearing. It's an NPC right now. He's not real. I am real. Kalal says you are a vampire. I know for sure. I am not a vampire. Marvin says, who is the GOAT of football? Don't know. I don't watch football. Kalal says you are a vampire. No, I'm not. Hall says I'm a roomie. I don't know who that is. Retro says, ah, okay. YouTube says, have you ever come in a flute to see if it whistled? No. Graces says hi. Hello, Graces. Cold Slayer says, you look happier than ever. I do? Nice. Nathan says, do you play Roblox? I don't. Leon says, what y'all talking about? He's not a vampire. Nobody is. Nolan says, Queen Latifah Dawn. What? Louis says, what's the last gift you gave your kid? I don't have a kid. Stank says, have you ever summoned any creatures with a spell or maybe a chant? No way. I haven't. I don't believe in the supernatural. Val says, are bathrooms just a scam made by bathroom companies to sell more bathrooms? No. They're useful. Vold says, how's it going, Don? Remember me? I don't. Kieran says Peter Piper picked peppers, but Run rocked rhymes. Humpty Dumpty fell down. That's his hard time. Okay. Nolan says plans for Christmas. Just nothing exciting, just seeing people. Charlie says, I did it with my little cousin and she died. No comment. Ayash has a favorite corn category. Pornography? I don't like pornography. Candace says hi. Hello, Candace. Joe Dirt super chatted $2 American. Thank you, Joe Dirt. Joe Dirt says, politicians are vampires. They suck up our money. Yeah, that seems kind of true. I mean, I think everyone is kind of greedy to a degree, in my opinion. Thank you again, Joe Dirt, for your $2. Kay says, do you like the 6'7", the meme? No. Thea says, holy shit, the guy talking about boinking his cousin, then she died? What the fuck? I mean, he's just making up a story, so don't worry about it. Sunsettle says, Jesus is king. I don't think so, but thank you. Msoa says, will you ever consider becoming vegan so you no longer contribute to the slaughter of innocent beings? I know, but maybe in a few decades. Hog says, tell us about Corn Pop for a like. He was a bad dude, and he ran a gang of bad boys. Madra says, I think the Dems are bloodsuckers who spend our money. Okay. Ryan says, do you like the vegan teacher? I'm not a follower of hers. Yazdan says, can you mod me for a bit? No. Louis says, are you up or down? Sorry. Graces says, Stram. What? Andre says, wow. Wow, what? 12K says, I miss being mod. Okay. Chunky Sweat says, Don Benitez facts. Donations for our Holiness Church are now open. You are also welcome to donate your wives. Yes, please do both of that. Val says, unpopular opinion. LeBron isn't that good of a basketball player. I don't know if that's true. I don't watch basketball. Dirt says, do vegans drool when they mow the lawn like we drool when we cook a steak? Why would they do that? Hog says, Corn Pop was a bad dude who ran a bunch of bad boys with pomade in the hair. All right. Lore says, it was good seeing you. May your holidays rock. Thank you. No one says any New Year's resolutions. I think the stream is gonna, on New Year's Day, I might forever change the way I do streams. Miro says steak or chicken. Chicken. YouTube says, why do y'all ask him the dumbest shit? Because it can be entertaining. Chunky says, Miro, you must donate your wives. Yeah, please do that. Just kidding. Nicole says, skip me 4 times. I'm sorry, Nicole. Marvin says, bro couldn't see me, so he blind. You hot dog. What? Matten says, top or bottom. No comment. Jane says, hey, Don, if you had to pick, would you rather put one in the pink or one in the stink? Thanks. No comment again. Nana says, Jesus is king. Jesus is the father. I thank you for spreading your message, but I just don't believe in that. Time's Up says, you know about Bofa. What's Bofa? Andre says, how do you handle an itchy butt? Just resist the temptation. That's gross. Louis says, day 15 of asking Don Benitez to play Minecraft with him. I'm never gonna play Minecraft on stream. Johnny says, hello, brother. Nice to see you again. Hello, Johnny. Miro says, Bofa D's nuts. Ha ha ha. Milk says, do you love Jesus? No, I don't. Poor Matu says, is it gay to intercourse a transsexual? No comment. Yazdan says, why were medieval punishments so harsh? Isn't that a myth? I says, do you play any video games? I play Minecraft sometimes. Graces says, deep nuts. Okay. Marvin says, have you have a godfather? Did I have a godfather? I don't think so. Kendo says, ah, yes, we meet again, Don. Sup, Kendo. Nicole says, wow, that breaks my heart that you don't love the Savior. Time is running out. You are about to find out. Thank you, but I don't believe. Jane says, what do you think of the fat bee nor society? I don't know what you're talking about. Luke says, poop is done. What? Richard says, Dixon Myers. Okay. YouTube says, if you had a daughter hot enough, would you crack? No, I don't like incest. AJ says, tech support glasses. Glasses, more like headset. Personal says, am I gay for being jealous at my friend because he has a gay best friend? I don't get what you're saying. Poor Matu says, ooh, that's a slur, Donathan. Did I say something bad? Sorry if I did. Marvin says, do you have a godfather like mine? I don't know what your godfather is like. Says, do you know my country has no McDonald's? I did not know that. What country is that? Fast says, what's the best food ever and why? Um, I mean, my favorite is the Big Mac. No says, whoever asked the daughter question needs their hard drive checked. Ew. I don't think they do. I think they were just being silly. Lol says, that's your name? Yep. Don, D-O-N. Smile says, day 13 for asking you to only say hi to me. That's not real. You haven't asked that 13 days. Enlighten says, Google, get me pictures of my grandma, Nathan. You have a grandma named Nathan? Okay. Jay says, Nick Fuentes or Ben Shapiro. I mean, I'm not a follower of either, so. Gary says, with your newfound fame and success, will you ejaculate inside a woman? How is that related? Johnny says, would you become a manager at a transgender lemonade stand for $90,000 a year? A transgender lemonade stand? I mean, I don't think I would work at a lemonade stand. Jared says they're cousins. What? Hot says Don's been decorating, always switching it up. You're talking about the blanket? Yeah, I plan to decorate more. Talwan says Sophie Rain or Livy Dunn. Neither. Three-Eyed says, what's your favorite web series? Web series? What's technically a web series? I don't know. I like the YouTuber Salsy one. Cold Slayer says, okay. No comment. I say no comment a lot. Rachel says day 71 million of asking Dawn to say hi. Hi, Rachel. AJ says, I'm a fan of Dirty Mother and Son. RP, check my hard drive too. You're into incest? Okay. Fast says, why Big Mac though? Because my taste buds like it for some reason. The pale skin says the corner of your room is an optical illusion. True, I like it. AJ says, would you crack Hudda? What? Diane says, have you heard of Zewich? No. Milk says, what's the best Christmas gift you've ever gotten? Christmas gift. I can't. I just like spending time with people. Personal says, would you smash a hermit crab? No, I wouldn't. Alumni says, my friends said liking movies such as Pulp Fiction, Donnie Darko, and Eyes Wide Shut is pretentious film snobs, and we are not good movies. Maybe there's some truth to that. Billy says, any plans for Christmas? Yeah, just seeing people. Nothing exciting. Madarush says, ever pee out a window? No. Msoa says, it looks like you're in a big cardboard box. I get that a lot. Louis says, I think you're brave. What you're doing is kind of scary, to be honest. Maybe if I was doing this in person, it would be, but you guys are just words on a screen. Harsh says, what's your favorite Bible verse? Matthew 5:28. Lust. The one about lust. Chunky Sweat says, gun to your head. Do you crack Gorlock the Destroyer or let Diddy Luther King hit? I'll cross that bridge if and when I get there. AJ says, you look like you'd be on iCarly. Huh, okay. Miro says, I will be more than just words on the screen. I doubt that. Mantis says, the thumbnail said ejaculate inside a woman. Oh, that's what the thumbnail had on the... That's a crazy thumbnail. Backpack says, we are AI to him, basically. Ryan says, would you goon for $20 on stream? No. Mick says, come to work at the IT factory. I'm good. No, thank you. Rose says, I'm in your walls. No, you're not. Kev says, to dance the La Bamba, you need a little Grace Richie Valens, aka you. I look like Valens? Okay. Black, Black says, I finally found you. What's up, Black? Harsh says, if you had 5 minutes with Jesus Christ, what would you say to him? I would just be asking for wisdom, trying to get as much wisdom as possible. Porma2 says, am I your favorite generative model? You're one of my favorites. British says, what's your favorite Stranger Things character from any season and what season? I like Billy. Kieran says, it's The Godfather Part 3. QBC sips lime Bacardi. What are you saying? Batten says, how do you make friends in college? Join a club. Lilac says, do you watch the Hunger Games? I don't. Kendo says, honestly, I might just be quiet at this stream. You're not going to type? Okay. Porma2 says, feel so validated right now. My pants are tight. Okay. Totally says, do you play Clash Royale? No, but when I did, I liked the Hog Rider. Thrift says, hey, Big Don, can you show us how to put a rubber on a condom? I'm not going to do a tutorial for that. Jimmy says, only answering questions. His mods are proofreading. Boring. Not true. I have 0 mods. Harsh says, you know about Solomon's story? A little bit. He had a bunch of wives. He was into dark arts or something. Dark says, what's your favorite cheese? I guess just American. Soka says, my grief counselor died. He was so good, I didn't even care. That's funny. Checker says, hi, I just came from a super hateful stream, and I'm hoping this place is more chill. To be honest, I can get pretty insane comments. Nobody is banned on my channel currently. People are free to say whatever they want, so that's a warning. Maybe you shouldn't be here. Porma2 says, at Checkbear, Don is a soy liberal. That's right. Andrew says, bro, did you just fart? No, I didn't. Harsh says, do you go to church? No, I don't. Hog says he doesn't know about Solomon, but he will know Corn Pop by end of 2026. Yeah, I think I know about Corn Pop more than Solomon, unfortunately. Madrush says some of these foods in store are not real. Yeah, they're very artificial. Nicole says, I walked away for a minute. What was that warning? What was said? I was saying that I may read offensive stuff, so just be warned. Raxter says some foods are actually synthetics. Yeah, Campbell chicken. Brian says, do you know Sue Woo? No. Sunsettle says, Jesus is king, Jesus is the father. Thank you, but I'm not a believer. Nadith says, why most comments unread? Because there's too many, obviously. Kevrish says, keep getting timed out. Who's doing that to me? You can only type one message per 10 seconds. That's what's happening. Stefan says, hey bro. Hey Stefan. Chunky says, Black Rose, Father Don is looking for more concubines. I am. Debloot says, sup. Hello, Debloot. Raxter says, spin 6-7 to the 77-6. What? I wouldn't. Never mind. Soka says, why can't a dwarf play the role of E.T.? Because they would have no home to phone to. What? Seven says, what do you think about these kids saying 6-7? I don't mind it. I don't do it myself though. I'm like indifferent. Moa says you're getting popular. I am? Okay. Benjamin says, Don, are you AI? I am not. Buckeye says, are you going to address the terrorist allegations? I don't believe I have any of those. CR7 says, remember me? I don't, sorry. MSOA says, where do you want to vacation to in 2026? Maybe Washington, D.C., considering the 250th USA anniversary coming up. Black Rose says, did you find a girlfriend or a boyfriend? I keep that stuff private. Porma2 says, have you or will you ever say a gamer word in the heat of passion? No, I don't want to hurt people. I'm gonna end the stream now. See ya. Actually, one more thing. If you want to friend me on Discord, there's a link in my About Me on YouTube. All right, bye.